Tired of bad hires? One bad hire can cost you big time in dollars and time. Keep watching to learn how to hire better. My 5 best approaches to hiring the right people right now. First, and this might seem obvious, but you need to write a job description that is aligned with your company's values. A couple of years ago, I was working with one of my coaches and I was about to hire someone. And she said, "Let me see your job description." So I sent it over to her and she said, "This doesn't seem really aligned with you." And I'd always been trained in how to write corporate job descriptions. So they, felt kind of corporate-y. It was kind of blah, really. And I said, I have no idea, how to write a really good job description. And she said, it needs to be aligned with you. It needs to sound like you. It needs to use language that you would use. It needs to be the dream job for someone that's waiting out there. And then all of a sudden it clicked. I was like, oh yeah. I talk a lot about intention, how to sell with intention, how to grow your company with intention, but I never really thought about hiring with intention. And she brought up such a great point. So what I decided to do was to rewrite that job description in a way that was completely aligned with me and my values. And I used my own voice. And that really shifted everything. Once I got that job description out there, it was like a weight had been lifted from me because I knew in my heart that the right person was going to show up. Soon after that, after I'd shared it on Indeed and other job boards, and I shared it on social media, someone from my past reached out to me. And it was someone that had worked in my company years ago. And she's like, "I saw your job description. It sounds amazing. In fact," she said, "it sounds like my dream job." And I'm not making this up. She said, "It sounds like my dream job," which is exactly what I wanted. So, of course, interviewed her very quickly, hired her, and it's just been amazing having her on board. So again, in order to hire the right people, you have to start by writing a job description that's really aligned with your company values, but also with your values. It has to sound like you. Second, you want to write the role description before you post the job. Again, this seems, probably obvious. You've heard this before, but I see so many people rushing to get a job description out on a job board that they forget to write the role description. Writing the role description will remind you of the nuances that are in that job, or the certain personality type that might be needed for the specific job, or certain things you might have missed in the job description. So writing the role description is guaranteed to make your job description even better. Plus, of course, once you finally hire someone, right, they clearly know what their job is. It's complete. It's also very aligned with the company. So there's not any surprises for them. It's just they start, they know exactly what they need to do, and they know how to be successful at their job. Third, and this is so important, remember, it's their job to sell you, not your job to sell them. And often in interviews, if we're hiring someone, we could be the ones who are just telling them all the great things about the company and all the reasons that they might want to work there. But the truth is, maybe we don't want them to work at the company, and not because they're a bad person. It's not a fit for them, or maybe it's just not aligned for them. So I remember years ago, I used to have a really large sales team, and it was when I was working for an IT consulting and training company, and we hired many, many salespeople over the years. And I remember one specific situation where this gentleman had answered the job posting. He'd sent his resume in. He sent a great cover letter. He seemed super interested. And I was interested too because everything looked great on paper. He came in and we started chatting, started the interview process. I was asking him questions. And then all of a sudden it was like, he kind of he shifted the energy. And he was kind of like, "Why don't you sell me on why I should be here?" And I remember it was very awkward. And I thought, I don't think that that's what I'm supposed to be doing here, especially if this is supposed to be a salesperson. I just looked at him and I said, "Well, I think it's actually up to you to sell me on why you should come to this job." And he's like, "No, I'm so good at what I do. You have to sell me." So anyway, it was this kind of very interesting back and forth until finally I just said, "You know what? This job probably isn't a fit for you, and that's okay." And, we parted and we went in our separate ways. If I just would have looked at his resume and his cover letter, I would have thought, this guy seems great. And I might have gone in with that mindset. But I knew that it wasn't my job to sell him. I knew it was his job to sell me. And when he wasn't doing it, I knew it wasn't a fit. So as you're listening to this and you're thinking about your next hire, keep that piece in mind, right? When you have a great job description and you have a great role description, and this is going to be an amazing opportunity for someone, it's not your job to sell them. right? It's up to them. Fourth, you want to ask open-ended questions that help you discern who this person is and if it's a good fit. So an open-ended question would be one that they can't answer yes or no to. And an open-ended question really gives you the opportunity to find out more about them, about what they liked in their last position, about what they believe their strengths are, about what they believe they might want support with, right? And you can learn a lot by asking open-ended questions. I will say this though, have your open-ended questions ready ahead of time. That way you're not like trying to scan your brain to think of what you're going to say or, going into the sales mode again and trying to sell them on the company. You want to have those questions ready and prepared. Fifth, recognize that how someone treats you or follows up with you is exactly how they will be with others and your clients. Now, this was especially true in the world of sales. It took me years to get this, but once I finally got it, I realized that how a salesperson answered a job posting and how they followed up with me and how they came into the interview and how they followed up after the interview is exactly how they were going to be in relationship with my clients or other team members. And it took me a long time to get this, but I can remember one specific sales professional who I hired. And I'd actually met him at a retail store. So he hadn't followed up on an ad, but I met him at a retail store. And he was just so good at retail sales. And even though I wasn't hiring a retail sales position, there was just something about how he interacted with the customers and how he treated them that I thought, oh my gosh, like this will transfer to the corporate world so powerfully. So I brought him in for an interview and he showed up dressed to impress. He was professional. He brought a copy of his resume and his cover letter again. He had done a lot of research on the company. And not only did he know why he wanted to work for the company, he knew exactly what his first 90 days would look like. Because that's one of the questions I always asked our sales professionals is like, what would your first 90 days look like at the company? What would you be doing? And, and what would happen after that? That one open-ended question showed me so much about how they would be in that position and whether or not they could be successful. So because you've stayed on, I have a pro tip that I want to share with you. And this is really, really powerful because when you hire someone, and I know we're talking a lot about sales professionals, but a lot of you will be hiring sales professionals, so hopefully this is helpful. When you hire someone, a sales professional or someone else, you want to ask them for a 90-day plan, which is what I was just talking about. This other person I'd hired, he came in with the 90-day plan. He was super clear on what he would do. Ask them what they would do in their first 90 days, and then have that 90-day trial period so that you know that they're following through on what they said they were going to do. So in the world of sales, I would have our new sales professionals create a very clear 90-day plan with their sales goals and reverse engineer exactly what they were going to do every day to get there. Now, before I gave a full offer, I would look at this 90-day trial plan and I would know, pretty quickly whether or not they were going to be successful. And then if I approved it, if it was like, yeah, this 90-day plan, this is definitely going to work, then it was an agreement that if this 90-day trial worked out well, that they would have a full-time position. And if it didn't, that I wouldn't be letting them go, that we would just part ways. And we had that agreement set up ahead of time, which was really, really powerful. It saved me a lot of time and it saved me a lot of money. So thanks for listening today. And I hope you learned a lot about really what to shift in your hiring process so that you can make great hires that don't waste your time or your money. We talked about the power of making a job description that's aligned with your company values. We talked about writing a role description before you post the job so you can be crystal clear on what you want that person to be doing on day one. Then we talked about how important it is that you're not selling this person on the job because it's them selling you on why they need to be there. We also looked into open-ended questions and why they're important to ask in the interview process. And finally, we talked about the importance of remembering that how someone treats you or follows up with you is exactly how they will treat others in your company, clients or employees. Thanks again for listening. It was super fun hanging out. So on the next video, we're going to be talking about experience versus skills, what you really want to look for when hiring. And remember, your 2X is waiting for you too.